Well, the question in my mind becomes this. Look, I've read a lot of the investigative materials, not all of them, of course, but it looks like there was some kind of an accelerant, that is like gasoline or kerosene, to make that fire take off. There are various reports about Willingham standing in the yard, coolly watching as the fire burned. But there are other eyewitness reports that say he wanted to go in and rescue the children and he had to be restrained. Here's the thing that bothers me. Number one, two things. Number one, why would Rick Perry, if he's very sure of this verdict, why would he not invite an investigation that would confirm that the verdict against Willingham was correct? But number two, if this Dr. Craig Beeler is in this as an opponent of the death penalty, and if he is consciously looking for ways to discredit the verdict, then I can see a little bit of Rick Perry's side of this.
The timing's awfully suspicious. That the committee met back on May the 15th of 2009. Their minutes are up on their website. They said clearly at that time that they would be hearing Dr. Byler's report in October, and the governor waits till 2 days before. We've got quite a bit of evidence out there that he was putting pressure on the committee to not hear the report. And I guess ultimately when they said, no, we're going to hear the report, the committee was gutted 2 days before its October meeting. I'm with you. That just looks awfully suspicious. And if you believe that what happened was fair and just, then you cannot shy away from having it examined and reviewed.
Well, that's true. And I'll tell you what, if I had to guess, I would say Willingham is probably guilty of this. And when you look at the evidence is pretty stark that this guy wanted those kids dead. The actions that he made, he moved his car out so the car wouldn't burn, and then later said, oh, well, that was so that the gas tank on the car wouldn't flare up. I don't know if I can buy that or not. If my grandkids were inside a burning house, I'm risking my life, and I'm going in to get them. I don't care how bad the fire is. So I think the guy was most likely guilty. But if we're going to have an investigation after the fact, which I think is bizarre, you have your investigations before the fact. But if you're going to have your investigations after the fact, the only question in my mind, Deborah, and let's see if you agree with me, I want to make sure this is a true investigation and not being done by an anti-death penalty zealot.
Agreed. But I think, we have to remember that these are the governor's appointees that he's removing. So you presume that he would appoint people to the commission who were unbiased and who were seeking, science and objective evidence. To remove your own appointees, a little suspicious.
Well, it is. And then if you're following the big city dailies, Roger Jones was in yesterday's edition of the Dallas Morning News, and he says this. He's a blogger and an editorial writer. The case for Cameron Todd Willingham's innocence is far from made. In my view, I have qualms about the possibility of miscarriage of justice, and that's partly why I'm a death penalty opponent. That awful possibility, but we haven't heard the full and undistorted story about this tortured, politically tinged case. And he says that's one reason I'm disappointed in Rick Perry. We needed to sort things out, and he shouldn't have messed with the Texas Forensic Science Commission. And this is what I wrote in the Dallas Morning News this past Friday. Perry, I think if he's going to be reelected governor, Deborah, and you're hoping that he's not, he's got to step back. He's got to give the position of impartiality. And I think if a true and serious investigation shows that Willingham didn't set this fire, I think Rick Perry's in trouble, not because of the execution, not because of the verdict, but because of the meddling with this forensic board.
Well, and we've seen this isn't the first instance of meddling, and I think that's the thing that should cause all of us concern. You may know that I'm an advocate of term limits. I just really believe that politics is a corrupting influence, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. It is the proper thing for Texans to do, not as punishment, but as protection for our elected officials, to send them into elected office to serve for a season. The governor has had his season, appreciate the service to Texas, but he has become too blinded to the corrupting power of politics to be objective. And I think we're seeing more and more evidence, again, where he comes out and says, I don't mind if I step over the law as long as things happen the way I think they ought to happen. That is not justice, and it's not the kind of leadership that we need from the governor of Texas. It's
Deborah,
time for Rick Perry to retire.
There are so many things I want to talk to you about. I've blocked out a little more time. Are you able to stay with us past the bottom of the hour?
Yes, sir.
All right, because I want to open up the phone lines, too. Would you like to take some calls?
Sure, I'd be happy
All
to
right,
do
let's
that.
go to Kermit, Texas, and here is Gail. Gail, you're on with Debra Medina.
Good morning, Lynn.
Hi.
I just want to tell you that someone sent me an email about Debra, and I clicked on the email. I read about her, and I was so thrilled that there was someone else running besides Perry and Bailey Hutchison. I had decided a long time ago that I was going to put my own term limits on politicians. I will vote for them twice and then get them out of there and vote somebody else in.
All right, Gail, thank you very much. Deborah, what are your thoughts on that? Two terms as governor, is that about right?
I think we're asking the delegates at the Texas Republican Party convention to write that rule, but I suspect we'll see something along those lines, two or three terms for people, and then it's time to let someone else serve. That protects the people, and it protects the legislator, the elected official, from that corruption.
All right, folks, if you'd like to speak with Debra Medina, who is a candidate for Texas governor, the phone number is 1-866-895-6442. We'll keep her past the bottom of the hour so that you'll have a chance to talk to her. All right, we've talked about Perry, and we've talked about this Cameron Todd Willingham case. The thing, did you read my piece in Friday's Dallas Morning News, I would assume?
I did.
All right. My problem with Kay Bailey Hutchison is this wishy-washiness. She says, I want to stay in Washington and see this health care bill through. And then she says, in a prior interview, I want to stay and make sure that cap and trade doesn't get through. Well, okay, those are both very admirable things. I don't want Obamacare. I want serious, decent reform of the way we dispense our health care, and I certainly don't want cap and trade. But do you get the feeling she can't decide if she wants to be governor?
I get the feeling she wants cake and eat it too, and she wants kind of a crowning. I think she was banking on the fact, no pun intended, that the governor, the approval ratings were so low that she would be kind of anointed as our next governor. And I believe that there are many Texans who have seen her leadership in Washington lacking. I think she's very good at sitting on the fence, and we need someone who has some courage and will stand up for Texas in Washington, D.C. We've not seen that. We've seen a growing dependence on Washington. Our state budget is more and more dependent on federal handouts and subsidies. That's not what Texans want. We want a sovereign state, one that stands sovereign and leads in this nation, not one that's subservient to Washington, D.C.
All right, folks, we have to go to break. Debra Medina, Republican candidate for governor, is with us. She's willing to take your phone calls. Those of you already hooked up with us, just don't go away. We'll go to the phone calls right after the break. And we're talking about Cameron Todd Willingham, Rick Perry, Kay Bailey Hutchison, and other things involving the state government of Texas.